Okay, here's another iteration of our little video blog. And today I'm talking to a good friend and someone who I spend an awful lot of time with on the web event side of what I do at the AMA, Dr. Joseph Reed. Joe, good to see you.
Good to see you as well, David. Good to see your smiling face today.
Well, I'm such a happy guy. I took I'm varying my routine a little bit this morning. I'm gonna try to keep it going forward. I used to take like a 2 mile walk at the end of the day. You know what I mean? The dog with the dog, and the dog loved it, and we went crazy and stuff like that. But I'm trying to think, well, that's probably not enough because I used to walk around Manhattan all the time, when I was in the city. So what I'm trying to do now is do two walks, one in the morning, before I log on and start doing all this virtual stuff, and one in the evening, as I was before. So, and I'm doing that because I just find it helps me out. It helps me think. It helps me get outside. It helps me, the air and the trees and the sky and all that other stuff. I don't want to go too long into the whole Zen side of that, but I find that something as simple as that is really sort of helping me out. And even though we depend on you to help us train leaders and managers and folks like that. If you don't mind, if we could just spend a short time here talking about self-care, taking care of yourself. And you travel much more than I do, and I travel sometimes, but I'm always struck by the flight attendant sort of saying, in the event of emergency, oxygen mask will come down and you'll freak out. They don't say that. And before you help anybody with their mask, you should put on your mask first. So that's always my analogy for kind of self-care. If you want to be good to anybody, you got to take care of yourself first. What are
Yeah.
your high-level thoughts about self-care?
But self-care is not an indulgence at this point in time. I think it's a necessity so that you can be there for your family, so that you can be there for your team. I think we are all under all kinds of pressure right now. There are these problems that are just cascading down on us one after another, wave and wave of problem, wave and wave of change. My wife is an elementary school teacher, and all of a sudden, last week, she was having to learn how to teach online. Now, she's not teaching high school, she's teaching second graders. So, kind of a big change for her to go about doing it that way.
Sure.
And I think all of these changes that we're feeling can have an impact on us.
Sure.
Right? I had an old friend who used to say that the only people who like change were babies with wet diapers. And that's true, particularly when the change is outside of our control. And in this pandemic, it kind of feels like everything's outside of our control, doesn't it?
Oh,
And I think that's
absolutely.
stressful. So,
Absolutely.
where
Yeah.
where are you in terms of the Dave Summers stressometer right now? If 10 is the most stress you've ever experienced and 1 is the least, where are you?
As I talk to you right now, I'm at about a 5, 4, 5. I'm not feeling terrible, kind of waiting to see what the day brings me. Um,
Yeah.
but obviously, it varies a lot. You know what I mean? A little bit later today, tomorrow morning, I could be at a 6 or a 7.
Over
It
past
changes.
3 weeks, what's the highest number you've experienced?
With this particular, I would say a 9 or a 9 plus. Now, I've never where 10 is to the point of like almost being paralyzed. You know what I mean? 8 to 9, I would say.
Okay, gotcha. I think a lot of us are in the same boat. I woke up at 2:30, middle of the night. Now, this was about a week ago, just with my mind racing. And I had to press the reset button there.
Hmm.
I I had to change what I was thinking of in order to reduce my body's reaction to what was going on. And that was an example of the stress response. Now, I don't want to get too far down in the weeds, but let me just take a moment and mention this. When we feel stressed, and by the way, stress is an internal process, right? It's our reaction to things. Uh, uh, there's a Buddhist concept called first and second darts. And first darts represent all of the circumstances that are causing us pain. And right now there are a lot of first darts coming at us, right? Life is not being kind right now. We've got the virus, we've got the social distancing, we've got the economic impacts, all of those things. And we don't have any control over them.
Hmm.
Second darts represent our reaction to the first darts. And oftentimes the second darts make the first darts worse.
Hmm.
So in this case, stress and our reaction to it is a second dart.
Hmm.
Now, when we get stressed, the sympathetic nervous system takes over. It's creating a fight or flight mode. We're going to wrestle the bear, or we're going to run like hell away from the bear. And in that case, there are probably, a number of physiological changes that are occurring. But Dave, there are actually some psychological changes as well. One of the things that happens when the sympathetic nervous system's in charge is that it narrows our focus. It narrows our thinking. We can't see the big picture anymore. We can't think creatively. We can't think innovatively. And that's probably an issue right now when we need to think critically.
I would
And
think,
the
yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I would think that that's a larger. I mean, we all have our coping things and things we need to get ourselves through minute by minute. But I would think that anybody who, again, I'll come back too much on this leader side of it, but anybody who's got other people depending upon them, you know, that's an even bigger risk, right?
I think it is, not only because of the thinking piece, but because of the relational piece.
Hmm.
When we're under stress, when the sympathetic nervous system's in charge, we become very self-focused. It's
Hmm.
all about self-preservation at that point in time, and it's a lot harder to connect with other people. It's more difficult to recognize where they're coming from, to empathize with them. And as you said, if you're a leader, that's critical at this point in time. You need to be there for your people. And at the personal level, we're self isolating with our families right now 24/7.
Yeah.
And if you're allowing stress to get in the way of your relationships with people, it's probably going to cost you.
I want to keep this to the point here, so I'm just going to wrap up with one quick question to you. Can you give us maybe one or two quick, tips that might help somebody through this quick self-analysis or this ability to, detach or whatever? What are your high-level thoughts on that?
Sure. Okay, high level. Um, Change your focus to begin with. It's real easy to ruminate and catastrophize about all of the terrible things that are going on around us, but we don't have any control over that.
Hmm.
Focus on things that you can control, and at the most basic level, you can control yourself. You can
Okay.
control your thinking, right? Now, you can't control every thought that pops into your head, but you don't have to believe every silly little thought that pops into your head either. You can
Okay.
be selective and discriminating about what you do believe.
Okay.
Secondly, control your emotions. Now, when I say that, I hear myself and I realize you can't
Okay.
actually control your emotions. You know, they're kind of happening beneath the surface, but what we can control is the impact of our emotions. And we do that through self awareness and self regulation. So recognize the triggers that are leading to the emotions you're experiencing. If you're waking up at 2:30 in the middle of the night, what's the emotion that's causing that? And then what's triggering that emotion?
Hmm.
When you surface it, all of a sudden it becomes something that's much more manageable and you can
Okay.
start to regulate. And then the last thing to focus on and to be mindful about is your behavior.
Hmm.
I think a lot of people are running around right now without a whole lot of thought.
Hmm.
They're running around, my father used to say, like chickens with their heads cut off. And what we need to do is to step back and create some space. Now, there was a book, and I don't know if you ever read it, Dave, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. Does it ring a
Yep.
bell?
Yep.
Okay. And he was an Austrian psychiatrist who wrote that book based on his experience as a prisoner in a Nazi death camp in World War II. And in that situation, horrible, horrible things were being done. He had no control over them. But a quote from the book was, between stimulus and response, there is a space. And within that space lies our power to choose.
Mhm.
Now, it's hard to find the space between the stimulus, all of the stuff coming at us today, and our response. One of the best ways I know to create that space is to practice mindfulness.
Okay.
Do you practice it, Dave?
I do. I do. My flavor of it, yes, but I do. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, at its core, all mindfulness is about being present in the moment, being aware of what you're experiencing in your internal state, being aware of what you're perceiving. We don't usually do that. We're not usually in the now. Most of the time, we're either spending our mental energy in the past,
Hmm.
ruminating over something that happened to us a while ago, or replaying that last conversation we had with Fred, whoever Fred is,
Hmm.
or we're focused mentally on the future,
Sure.
and that can be bad as well. Catastrophizing.
Sure.
So for me, I practice mindful meditation. And mindful meditation comes in different flavors, but I like learning it by focusing on what's happening in my body and my breathing. And we don't have time to get into it here, but there are, I think, a couple of benefits. The here and now benefit is when you focus on what's happening in your body and you practice mindful meditation, it activates the parasympathetic nervous system. It activates the rest and relaxation system. And all of a sudden, you start to feel more peaceful, more calm. And you start to slow things down. The long-term benefit is that you're increasing your awareness of what your emotional triggers are
Hmm.
and what you are experiencing internally. And with that awareness comes control.
Okay, Joe. Thanks for your time. I really appreciate it, and you have a great rest of the day.
Thanks, Dave. You too.